Okay, we're finally through chapter 6 as we're moving through John's Gospel and looking at chapter 7. Chapter 6 was a very big chapter, starting with the feeding of the 5,000 and then Jesus' dialogue with the people and all the way to declaring his body flesh and blood and the disciples coming to a crossroads on that and then ending with the 12 saying, Peter's confession, you have the words of eternal life. So 6 is a really big chapter. Kind of that centered point around the feeding and the bread and the Exodus story leading into Jesus reclassifying it in terms of himself, which he does with a lot of things from the Old Testament. And then in chapter 7, we move into a place where Jesus comes into conflict with both the Jewish people represented by the crowd. Jesus is always speaking in terms of a crowd pretty much, and then the leadership of the Jews who are looking to trap him or kill him, and they're trying to figure out how to do that, and they're looking for him. So that's kind of the setting. When you read the commentaries, they look at this section as kind of these pieces of Jesus' teaching that are, I don't know if they have like manuscript evidence that they're kind of fragments all come together, but that's really the feeling here, that they're fragments of different teachings of Jesus that John kind of compiles into this chapter, both 7 and chapter 8. It doesn't have a real coherent flow like some of the other chapters do. So anyway, that's what I was reading, and it does feel like that there's a few places where Jesus is just coming into conflict with these folks. So let's dig into it. Chapter 7, verse 1. After this, Jesus went around in Galilee, purposely staying away from Judea because the Jews were waiting to take his life. The Jews there were waiting to take his life. So this picks up from chapter 5, where Jesus had gone to the Passover at the temple in Judea, and the Jews decide to try to kill him there, and then Jesus withdraws. So it's connected to that. So now here Jesus is in Galilee. We know he's been in Galilee, but we're told that he's there because he's hiding out, right? He wants to stay away from these Jewish leaders. And it's verse 2, but when the Jewish feast of the tabernacles was near, Jesus' brothers said to him, "You ought to leave here and go to Judea so that your disciples may see the miracles you do." And that was chapter 3, 2 and 3 together. We're told it's the Feast of the Tabernacles, and that's also known as the Festival of the Booths. We know this from, it signifies the wandering in the wilderness of the Israelites, and it's a good timestamp for us anytime a festival is noted here. And just for reference sake, the festivals, there are basically 7 festivals in Jesus' day that the Jewish people would celebrate. And 4 of them are in the spring, the month of Nisan, however you say that in Hebrew. So those 4 are Passover, and that moves right into the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of the First Fruits, and then the Pentecost, or Shavuot, which is called the Festival of Weeks or Feast of Weeks. So there's those 4 are kind of all together in the spring. The other festivals are in the fall, so either spring or fall. That's how you kind of know where you are. And those other 3 are Rosh Hashanah, which is called the Feast of Trumpets. Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. And Sukkot is the Feast of Tabernacles or Booths. So that's where we are. We're at the festival or feast of the booths or tabernacles. And that means we're in the fall time. So it helps to kind of locate us. When Jesus was in the second chapter, Jesus, it's the Passover and he cleanses the temple. So here we are moving through the year. Okay. Where are we? We are, Jesus' brothers said, you should go public, right? You should go to Judea so that everyone can see your miracles and believe in you. So that's their idea here. But verse 4 is interesting. It says, The brothers are speaking still. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you are doing these things, show yourself to the world. Verse 5, for even his own brothers did not believe in him. So this is, the brothers here, Jesus' own brothers, are acting a lot like the people following him who are not believing in him, the Jewish people, the crowds who, back in chapter 6 asked Jesus, what he said, do the work of believing, right? And the people ask, what work should we do? And he says, believe. But that question of like, what should we do? And challenging Jesus, and the brothers are kind of doing that same thing here, challenging Jesus to reveal himself so that people can believe in you, even though they don't believe in him. It's an interesting theme. It's a recurring theme here in John of this, like seeing him, knowing him, but do they believe, right? So back to chapter 1, he came to his own, yet his own did not know him or believe in him, but some did, right? That's always the recurring theme here. Verse 6, therefore Jesus told them, the right time has not come. The right time for me has not come, not yet come. For any time for you, okay, I'm not reading this well. Let me try again. Verse 6, the right time for me has not yet come. For you, any time is right. That's an interesting way to put it. And this idea of time, right? We've seen this before. Chapter 2, Jesus says to his mother, my time has not yet come. It sounds just like this. Chapter 4, he says to the woman at the well, a time is coming and is now here, right? When he talks about how to worship. Fast forward in chapter 12, when Jesus starts to go towards the cross, it says his hour had come. And verse 13, Jesus knew that his time had come. And then in 17, when he gets ready to be arrested, it says, he says in his prayer, Father, the time has come. So this idea of time, he's saying here that the time is not here right now. It's not right. It's funny, he says, for you, anytime is good. But he's trusting God's timing. So verse 7, the world cannot hate you because it hates me. No, the world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify that what it does is evil. It's interesting. It feels like he's talking about the time, and now he's talking about hate. So it's a little bit of a little switch of the theme here. And then verse 8, Jesus continues, you go to the feast. I am not yet going to this feast because for me, the right time has not yet come. So another repeating of the time. So he pushes his brothers forward and says, you go, but the time is not right for me. Verse 9, having said this, he stayed in Galilee. Okay. Verse 10, after this, his brothers had left for the feast. He went also, not publicly, but in secret. So it's interesting that Jesus doesn't go with his brothers. He stays independent from them. He tells them he's not going to go. That's not his time, yet he still goes in secret. This theme of, revealing himself, the brothers pushing him to reveal himself. He doesn't. He stays in secret. He's still hiding, but he does go up to Jerusalem and during the festival time. In verse 11, now at the feast, the Jews were watching for him and asking, where is that man? So again, we're reminded that the Jews are kind of waiting for him, wanting to trap him, looking for a way to kill him. Verse 11 tells us that. In verse 12, among the crowds there was widespread whispering about him. Some say he is a good man, and others replied, no, he deceives the people. Verse 13, but no one would say anything publicly about him for fear of the Jews. So here the people know that the Jews are looking for him too, and they're kind of keeping their opinions to themselves. They're trying to, whether they're trying to protect Jesus or they're afraid for their own sake, not really told. But it's interesting, verse 12, it says there was whispering in my translation, but it's the same word, gongyodzo, and it has that sense of murmuring. It's like an onomatopoeia a little bit. It's the same word that is used in chapter 6 when the people were grumbling, right? When they were complaining. It's that kind of word, or murmuring against him. And brings that same sense of what the Israelites were doing to Moses in the wilderness. So there's all that connection here. The people are murmuring, or it says whispering in mine, but it's that same word in Greek here. And then they're divided, right? Some say he's good, and the others say, no, he deceives the people. And the interesting part about this line, he deceives the people, is that was reading in a commentary that this was the main Jewish charge against Jesus to the early Christians, that he had deceived the people, like a formalized complaint. I don't know whether it's to the emperor or what, but this is a reflection of what the community of John is probably going through, being accused and hearing that Jesus is deceiving the people, or maybe they're deceiving the people. Here it is here in this conversation with the people. So it's a reflection of what's going on in John's own community. I'm going to stop there. We've gone on for 11 minutes, but we'll pick it up in verse 14 when Jesus shows up at the temple courts. All right, thanks.